We continue now at the top of Daf Mem Amud Aleph in Meseches Sotah. This is Sotah Daf 40a. The Gemara continues, B'ne'ilah de Yoma de Kippurei, and Ne'ilah of Yom Kippur, Mai Omar. So what do the people respond when they hear the Birchas Kohanim? Omar Mar Zutra says, V'yamri lo b'masnisa, and some say it's taught in a brisa. Some have the gears of b'masnisa tana. That's the gears of the Bach. The psukim that they respond by Ne'ilah of Yom Kippur are Hinichichen Yivorach Gavar Yirei Hashem Yivarecha Hashem Mitzion Urei B'tuv Yerushalayim Kol Yimei Chayecha Urei Vonim Levonecha Shalom Al Yisrael. Those are the psukim again that the congregation say in response to the Birchas Kohanim. Tosas over here says, B'ne'ilah d'yoma de Kippurei Mai Omar Lo Yadana Mai Lo Omar B'ne'ilah d'Tainis Ki Heicha d'Omar B'minchasa d'Tanisa. So Tosas says, I don't know why it is that they don't say by the Ne'ilah of a fast day the same way that we talk about the mincha of a fast day. The Hamashma beGemara Perek Shlosha Prakim the V'Tainis Havenami Ne'ilah. Sounds like in the Gemara in Perek Shlosha Prakim of Tainis that on a fast day also there's Ne'ilah. Abel Musaf lo havebu. You don't have Musaf on a fast day, but you do have Ne'ilah on a fast day. And so therefore Tosas is asking, why are we specifically asking about the Ne'ilah of Yom Kippur? We could be asking about the Ne'ilah that takes place on a Tainis. And the Gemara continues, Heichon Omran. So the Gemara says, where exactly we're saying that the congregation responds with these various psukim. At what point in time do they say these psukim? Rav Yosef Amar Bein Kol Bracha Bracha. Rav Yosef says it's between each bracha. In other words, let's say after Yivarecha Hashem V'yishmerecha, that's the first bracha, then there's a response. And then after the next pasuk that's said, and then after the next one, that's when the response is, Rav Sheshes Amar Ba'azkaras Hashem. And Rav Sheshes says they say these psukim when the Kohanim mention the name of Hashem. And the Gemara continues, Pligi bar Rav Mari v'Rav Zvid. There's a machlokas between Rav Mari and Rav Zvid. Chad Amar psuka l'kabel psuka. V'chad Amar akol psuka Amar l'hu l'kulu. So one says it's a pasuk corresponding to each pasuk, and the other one says on each pasuk you say all of the psukim that are mentioned. Rashi over here says psuka l'kabel psuka shakohanim omrim pasuk rishon. In other words, there's two understandings of how the people respond to the Birchas Kohanim. The first is it's one pasuk for each pasuk, meaning the Kohanim say the first pasuk, v'heim omrim echad me'elu, and then they respond with just one of these psukim that we have mentioned, echad me'elu. Uv'sheni hoyu omres hasheni. When the Kohanim say their second pasuk, the second pasuk of the bracha, so then the response is with the second pasuk that we mentioned. Uv'shlishi es hashlishi. And the third, they respond with the third. This is true by all of the things we mentioned, because we've always mentioned three psukim, so it's one pasuk corresponding to each pasuk. And the other one says no, on each pasuk that the Kohanim say, so they actually respond with all of the psukim that have been mentioned. But the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Chia bar Abba. Rav Chia bar Abba says, Kala Omrim Bigvul, and anyone who says these psukim in response to the Birchas Kohanim outside of the Beis HaMikdash, Eino Elatoa, he is simply mistaken. You're not supposed to say these psukim outside of the Beis HaMikdash. Amar Rabbi Chanina bar Papa. Rabbi Chanina bar Papa says, Teida, you should know, actually, even in the Beis HaMikdash, you shouldn't say these psukim. Do you ever hear of a slave who they're giving him a bracha and he doesn't listen? You should be listening to the brachas of the Birchas Kohanim, not responding with your own psukim. Amar Rav Acha bar Chanina. Rav Acha bar Chanina says, Teida, you should know, on the contrary, even outside the Beis HaMikdash, you should say these psukim. Is there such a thing as a slave that we give him a blessing and he doesn't graciously accept the blessing? You have to say something to acknowledge you're accepting the bracha. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Avo says, in the beginning I actually used to say these psukim as a response. But when I saw Rabbi Abba from Akko, he didn't say them. So I don't say these psukim. And the Gemara continues, V'yamar Rabbi Avo, and Rabbi Avo says, originally I thought that I was a humble person. But when I saw Rabbi Abba of Akko, that he said one reason, but his disseminator, he actually provided a different reason, his own reason, when he said over the shir, v'lo kapid, and Rabbi Abba de Minako wasn't strict about such a thing. So when I saw that, I said, Lav in Vesona Ano, I'm not really a humble person, as compared to Rabbi Akko de Minako. Umayin v'sanuse de Rabbi Avo, and what is the humility of Rabbi Avo? What was he referring to? The Amrullah devisu de Amore de Rabbi Avo, le devise de Rabbi Avo, because the wife of the disseminator of Rabbi Avo said to the wife of Rabbi Avo, Hadidan lo tzarech le lidach. We don't really need you. My husband doesn't really need you. to tell him what to say over. And the reason why he bends down and stands up over him, meaning the reason why my husband, who's the disseminator, bends down to listen to what your husband tells him to say, and he says what your husband tells him to say, that's just Yakara Bi'alma. That's just an honor that he's giving him, but really he doesn't need your husband. My husband doesn't need your husband. He can give the shir himself. So Azla Devisu v'Amr Leila Rabbi Avo. So the wife of Rabbi Avo went and told the story over to Rabbi Avo. Amar Allah, so he said to her, "My nafkalach mino, what's the difference to you? Mini umineh yiskalesi lo. It's through me and through him that Hakadosh Baruch Hu is praised, is exalted. In other words, out of the two of us, the shir is delivered. It doesn't matter whether or not whether he said that he needs me or not." And the Gemara continues, V'su, and further another story with Rabbi Avo. Rabbi Avo, imnu Rabbana le'lemimni bereisha. Rabbi Avo, the Rabbanan took a vote and they decided to make him the head of the yeshiva. Kevin the Chazil Rabbi Abba de Menako de Nefishi le Balechovas, but when he saw that Rabbi Abba of Akko had many creditors, he owed a lot of money. Amar Lahu, so he said to them, Iko Rabba, there's a greater person, and you should appoint him. That was in order to help Rabbi Akko de Menako to get out of debt. And the Gemara continues with another story of Rabbi Avo. Rabbi Avo, Rabbi Chia Barabba, Iklu Lahawas, Rabbi Avo and Rabbi Chia Barabba, they went to a certain place. Rabbi Avo Darish Bagadata, Rabbi Avo Darshan in Agadata. Rabbi Chia Barabba Darish Bishmaita, Rabbi Chia Barabba, he Darshan in Halacha. Shavkua Kuli Amal Rabbi Chia Barabba, Va'ozal Lagabe Rabbi Avo. So everybody left the shir of Rabbi Chia Barabba. Instead, they went to Rabbi Avo. So Chalash Daite, so Rabbi Chia Barabba became depressed at what happened. Amar Lei, so he said to him, Rabbi Avo said to Rabbi Chia Barabba, Emshalach Mashal Mahadavar Dome. Let me give you a mashal to what occurred over here. L'shnei b'nei Adam echad mocher avanim tovos v'echad mocher mini sidkis. Let's say you have two people. One is selling precious stones, and one is selling small items. Al mi kofsin. So who do the people jump on to purchase? What do they want to buy? Lo al zeh shemocher mini sidkis. Aren't they buying these small items? Rashi over here explains. Sidkis klei melachos noshim v'aniyim kagon plachim machten v'tzinoros, things like needles, small little vessels. Lo al mocher sidkis bitmia. Don't they buy the smaller items? Mitoch shedemeim kalim yeshlam konim harbe. Since there's very cheap items, there's a lot of people to buy them. Ulahafis daitohu amr. He did that in order to encourage him. That's why he told him this mashal. And so the same thing over here. What I'm providing with the agarata, these are things that people are coming to, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's more precious. Every other day, Rabbi Chia Barabba would accompany Rabbi Avohu to where he was staying. Mishum Yikra de Vekeser. That was out of respect of the house of the Caesar. Rabbi Avohu was associated with the house of the Caesar. But on that day, Alve Rabbi Avohu Rabbi Chia Barabba Rushbize. Rabbi Avohu escorted Rabbi Chia Barabba to the place where he was staying, again in order to encourage him. But nevertheless, his mind wasn't settled over what had occurred. And the Gemara now returns to the topic of what the congregation responds to the Shliach Tzibur during various points in davening. Bisman shliach tzibur omer modim. At the time the shliach tzibur is saying modim, ha'am mahem omrim. What does the congregation respond? Amar Rav says modim anachnu loch Hashem Elokeinu al sha'anu modim loch. They respond with that phrase. Again, modim anachnu loch. We thank you, Hashem, on that which we're able to thank you. Shmuel Amar Elokei chol basar al sha'anu modim loch. Shmuel adds the phrase Elokei chol basar al sha'anu modim loch. Rav Simoy Omer. Rav Simoy says the response is as follows: Yotzreinu Yotzer Bereishis, the Creator, al sha'anu modim loch. Nardoy Amri Mishmei de Rav Simoy. Nardoy says in the name of Rav Simoy that we had the following phrase: Brachos v'hodos l'shimcha agadol al shechisonu v'kiyamtanu. Brachos on the fact that you sustain us, keep us alive. Al sha'anu modim loch. Rav Acha bar Yaakov Mesayim b'hochi. Rav Acha bar Yaakov would finish with the following phrase: Kein techayenu eschadenu eskabsenu v'sasov gol yosenu. So you should keep us alive. You should show us favor. Gather us in from the exiles. L'chatzros kadshecha lishmor chukecha v'lasros r'tzonecha b'leiv avshalim. Al sha'anu modim loch. You finish off again saying that we should be gathered in to keep your laws and do your will, etc. Amar Papa says, Hilkach, therefore nemrinu lechula. We should say all of these things as a response to modim. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak says, Liolam te'emas tzibur alecha. Always the fear of the congregation should be upon you, should be upon a person. Sharei Kohanim Peneyam Klape Ha'am V'Achoreim Klape Shechina, because the Kohanim, they turn their faces towards the people, and their back is towards the Shechina. That shows the awe that a person is supposed to have for the Tzibur. Rav Nachman Amar Mehach. Rav Nachman says from the following pasuk from here, Vayakav HaMelech David al Raglav. It says that King David, he stood up on his feet. The idea is he stood up for the people. Again, he's showing a certain emas tzibur, a certain awe for the congregation. Vayomer David HaMelech said, Shemuni Achai Va'ami. It says, listen, my brethren and my nation. And the Gemara comments, Achai lo ma'ami v'ma'ami lo ma'achi. If he's saying my nation, if he's saying my brethren, why is he calling it my nation? If it's my nation, why is it my brethren? Why is he using these two different words? Amar Rabbi Elazar says, Amar lehem David li Yisrael. David said to Klal Yisrael, Imatem shomen li, if you listen to me, it's so achai atem, so you're my brothers. V'imlav, and if not, ami atem, so then you're my nation. Vani rodes v'makil, and I'll use the staffs, and I'll force you to do, and I'll compel you to do what I'm asking. Rabbanan Amri mehacha, Rabbanan say from here, from the following, De'ein ha-kohanim rashoyin lalos b'sandalein l'duchen, because the Kohanim, they're not allowed to go up in their sandals, they can't be wearing shoes when they go up to the platform. V'zeu achas mitesha takonos she'iskin Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, and this is one of the 9 takonos that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai instituted. And what's the reason for this? My time, and what's the reason? La mishum kavod, or isn't it because of the honor of the congregation? Amar Rav Ashi says, not necessarily, lo, no. Hasam shema nifsakol o ritzua. There, the reason why they're not supposed to go up to the platform with shoes is maybe the strap is going to break, besandolo, on the sandal, v'hadar azal lemiktere, and then they're going to go to tie it, they're going to go back to fix it, and they're not going to ascend the duchen, v'amri, and then people will say, ben grusho ben chalutzu, this individual is the son of a divorcee, or he's the son of a chalutza, he's disqualified from being a Kohen, and they're going to wrongly say that this person is a disqualified Kohen. And the Gemara continues with the 2 dots of a mikdosh bracha achas v'chulu. The Mishnah said that in the Beis HaMikdash, the birchas Kohanim would all be recited as one bracha, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Mem Amud Beis.